The blues. Just saying the word conjures up images, right? Dusty roads in Mississippi, flickering juke joints, a lone figure hunched over a guitar, pouring out their heart. The blues is more than music. It's a feeling, a raw expression of life's hardships. And without the blues, there'd be no rock and roll. Rock and roll, for all its energy and rebellion, is deeply rooted in the blues. Black musicians in the American South created the blues. It was their way of singing about joy, pain, love, and everything in between. The blues gave a voice to the voiceless. It spoke of struggle and resilience, and its influence on rock and roll is undeniable. Think about the music that gets your blood pumping, that makes you want to move. Now strip it down. Take away the drums, the distortion, the big production. What's left? Often, you'll find the heart and soul of the blues. The Mississippi Delta. Imagine the early 20th century. Life was hard, especially for Black Americans facing segregation and Jim Crow laws. Out of this struggle, a new music form emerged: the blues. The blues didn't appear overnight. It evolved from work songs, field hollers, spirituals, and the oral traditions of African American communities. These sorrow songs, as they were sometimes called, weren't just about sadness. They reflected the full spectrum of human experience: pain, yes, but also joy, resilience, and hope. What made the blues unique was its structure and its sound. The blues typically follows a 12-bar form. This provided a framework for the music and the lyrics. Then there's the blue note, a note slightly lowered in pitch, that gives the blues its distinctive mournful quality. This bending of notes, often on a guitar or harmonica, became a defining characteristic of the genre. Now, let's talk about the architects of the blues, the musicians who laid the foundation for a genre that would change music forever. These pioneers weren't just playing music, they were living it. Their songs were their stories, raw and unfiltered. Robert Johnson. The name itself is legendary. A bluesman shrouded in myth, said to have sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads for his extraordinary guitar skills. True or not, Johnson's music is haunting, powerful, and influential beyond measure. Charlie Patton. A raw, visceral performer who commanded attention with his slide guitar playing and powerful vocals. Patton was one of the first blues stars, drawing huge crowds to his shows in the 1920s and 30s. Blind Lemon Jefferson. One of the most successful bluesmen of the early 20th century, Jefferson's music was marked by his distinctive high-pitched vocals and intricate guitar work. As the blues moved from the rural South to urban centers in the North, the music itself began to evolve. Cities like Chicago and Memphis became new hubs for the blues, and with this migration came new sounds and technologies. The most significant development? The electric guitar. Imagine the raw power of the blues, now amplified, electrifying audiences with its intensity. Pioneers like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, and B.B. King plugged in and turned up, creating a sound that was both familiar and brand new. Muddy Waters, with his gritty vocals and slide guitar, became synonymous with Chicago blues. Howlin' Wolf's powerful voice and charismatic stage presence made him a force of nature. And B.B. King, the king of the blues, became a legend with his signature vibrato and his ability to make his guitar, Lucille, sing. Electric blues wasn't just louder. It was more dynamic, more experimental. The use of amplifiers allowed for new techniques like distortion and feedback, adding layers of texture and intensity to the music. This electrified sound would prove to be a major influence on the birth of rock and roll. Section 5. From Blues to Rock and Roll, the crossover. By the 1950s, the stage was set for a seismic shift in popular music. The blues, having migrated and evolved, was primed to ignite a new genre, rock and roll. This wasn't just a change in tempo or instrumentation. It was a cultural fusion, a collision of black and white musical traditions. Remember, this was the era of segregation. Radio stations were often racially divided. Yet, the raw energy and emotion of the blues, particularly the electric blues coming out of Chicago, began to break down those barriers. Young people, hungry for something new and exciting, found it in the blues. This wasn't always a smooth transition. The racial dynamics of the time meant that black artists often didn't get the credit or recognition they deserved. White artists, covering blues songs for a wider audience, often found greater commercial success. Section 6. Bridging the Color Line. Chuck Berry and Sister Rosetta Tharpe. As the lines between blues and rock and roll blurred, certain artists emerged as crucial bridge builders. They embodied the fusion of genres, blending the rawness of the blues with a youthful, energetic spirit that would define early rock and roll. Chuck Berry. The name is synonymous with rock and roll guitar riffs, but Berry's music was steeped in the blues. He took the 12-bar structure, the storytelling lyrics, and the guitar-driven sound of his blues heroes, and injected them with an infectious energy and wit. His songs weren't just about love and heartbreak. They tackled teenage life, cars, and the burgeoning rock and roll lifestyle. Sister Rosetta Tharpe, often overlooked in rock history, but her impact is undeniable. This guitar-wielding gospel singer was a force of nature. Section 7. White artists, black music appropriation and recognition. The story of the blues and its influence on rock and roll is a complicated one. It's a story of immense talent, undeniable influence, but also, sadly, of exploitation and lack of recognition. As rock and roll exploded in popularity, the contributions of black artists were often overshadowed. White artists, covering blues songs for a largely white audience, often achieved greater commercial success. Elvis Presley, while undeniably talented, owed a huge debt to the blues. His music was infused with the rhythms, vocals, and spirit of the blues, learned from black musicians he admired. This appropriation of black music wasn't new. It had been happening for decades. But with the rise of rock and roll, the stakes were higher. Section 8. The blues endures, a timeless influence. Despite the challenges and the lack of recognition, the blues never faded away. Its influence continued to resonate, weaving its way into the fabric of rock and roll and inspiring generations of musicians. The British invasion of the 1960s? Fueled by the blues. The Rolling Stones, the Yardbirds, Led Zeppelin, these bands devoured American blues records and brought their love of the genre to a global audience. They acknowledged their debt to the blues masters, often covering their songs and citing them as major inspirations. The blues wasn't just a sound, it was an attitude, a feeling. It was about raw emotion, about telling stories through music, about connecting with something deeper within yourself and your audience. And that spirit resonated with musicians across genres and generations. Section 9. Modern rock's debt to the blues, echoes of the Delta. Fast forward to today. The blues is still here. Its influence can be heard in countless modern rock bands. Sure, the sound might be more polished, the production slicker, but listen closely. The blues is in the DNA of rock and roll. The Black Keys. This duo from Akron, Ohio, have made a career out of channeling the raw energy of the blues. Their sound is a potent blend of blues riffs, garage rock grit, and soulful vocals. Jack White. Whether with the White Stripes, the Raconteurs, or his solo work, Jack White's music is steeped in the blues. He's a student of the genre, paying homage to his heroes while pushing the boundaries of blues-inspired rock. Alabama Shakes. Section 10. The Unbreakable Thread, honoring the blues legacy. The story of the blues and its profound influence on rock and roll is a journey through American musical history. It's a story of innovation, cultural exchange, and the enduring power of music to transcend boundaries. It's also a story that demands we acknowledge the debt that rock and roll owes to black musicians. The blues, born out of struggle and resilience, provided the foundation for one of the most popular and influential music genres in the world. Recognizing and celebrating the contributions of black artists is not just about setting the record straight. It's about understanding the true roots of the music we love. The blues isn't just a genre, it's a spirit, a feeling that continues to resonate with musicians and music lovers worldwide. It's the sound of the human experience, raw and unfiltered, expressed through music that moves the soul. And as long as there are artists who feel that connection, the legacy of the blues and rock and roll will continue to thrive.